Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Elias, and in this video my partner Christian and I will be covering chapter 18, America Claims an Empire. So, we're going to be talking about imperialism in America. Yay! Alright, let's get going. So, first of all, what is imperialism? Imperialism is known as the policy of extending control over weaker nations. In our case right here, it's the United States taking over new lands and joining them as states. So yeah, let's talk about American imperialism or expansionism. The very first factor or reason behind American imperialism was global competition. Most of the European nations in the 1800s were competing over land in Africa. So were some in Asia, like Japan. But there are other factors that made Americans strongly support expansionism. First, the desire for military strength. The U.S. needed a strong navy in order to compete with other strong countries. Under the command of Admiral Alfred Mahan, the U.S. built one of the largest naval powers in the world, the third largest to be specific. Second, the thirst for new markets. As factories and farms produced way more than American people could consume, America needed new markets and raw materials. So, expansionism was the solution for all the overproduction and the unemployment in the country. Then thirdly, the belief in cultural superiority. This racist belief that Americans and specifically Anglo-Saxons are superior than other people pushed people to expand and Christianize the other inferior groups. The first two examples of American expansionism are Alaska and Hawaii. Alaska was pretty easy. In 1867, the U.S. purchased it from Russia for $7.2 million. That was a huge amount of money that time, of course. But Hawaii's story is a little different. Since the 1790s, American merchants used to stop there on the way to China and India. Later, they started founding schools, churches, and sugar plantations that made most of the island's wealth. However, planters in the island had to pay high taxes to import their product to the mainland, so they called for annexation. In 1887, businessmen forced King Kalakaua to limit vote to landowners. They then set up a government, and under President McKinley, Congress proclaims Hawaii. After acquiring Alaska and Hawaii, we moved our attention to Cuba, a colony that the U.S. had long been interested in buying. Since Cuban people always wanted to free themselves from Spain, which is a competitor to the United States, America helped them in their rebellion that was led by José Martí in 1895. In response to that, Spain moved 300,000 Cubans into concentration camps. During that time, writings like yellow journalism tried to lure and enrage readers against the Spanish, while Spanish Minister Enrique Dupuy de Lume published a private letter where he calls McKinley weak and says he is swayed by the public. Anyways, going back to real war, USS Maine explodes on February 15, 1898. 266 sailors are killed, and Spain is blamed for that. Though it was probably innocent because the explosion appears to have been an accident. Oh, so you guys see right there the man flying. So that too was an example of the media exaggeration, where they try to give a bad picture of Spain and they try to outrage them against the Spanish. Okay, so raged by the explosion, the U.S. Navy strikes Spain fleet in both Cuba and the Philippines, declaring an end to the so-called splendid little war for the little cost and the poor amount of wounds. The Treaty of Paris, though, officially ended the war in August 1898, giving the U.S. control over Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. Okay, now we're talking about an empire. After having these new territories, the U.S. has to decide how to rule them. Let's start with Puerto Rico. First, it's important to mention that Puerto Rico was strategically important for the U.S. It offered protection for a future canal, and it also minimized European influence in the Caribbean. Puerto Rico wanted their independence, but the U.S. had other plans. They set up a civil government, a bicameral system, and full citizenship, making Puerto Ricans citizens of the United States. Now let's move to Cuba. Although the Treaty of Paris granted full independence to the territory, the U.S. signed an agreement with Cuba known as the Platt Amendment in 1903. What this Platt did is it gave the U.S. the right to maintain naval stations on the island and to intervene in Cuban affairs. With that done, Cuba had become a protectorate of the U.S. Wow, you might say it's going really smooth so far, no major resistance. Wait, oh, Filipino rebel. Right, so Filipinos apparently were not that glad with the call for annexation. They decided to react in rage. Rebel leader Emilio Aguinaldo vowed to fight for freedom, and in 1899 he led a rebellion. The so-called 3-year war claimed 20,000 Filipino rebels, 4,000 American lives, and $400 million. Gosh, that's 20 times the price we paid for the land. But what's more ironic is that the Philippines became independent. So yeah, that was a terrible loss for the United States. Foreign influence in China. Weakened by war and foreign intervention, many European countries had colonized in China, which was a vast potential market for American products. In 1889, John Hay, U.S. Secretary of State, issued the Open Door policy, which outlined his plan for free trade among nations in China. This policy helped Europe dominate China's cities. Of course, Chinese people were not okay with that. Resentment arose in the form of secret societies determined to rid China of these foreign devils. One of these secret groups was the Boxers that rioted in 1900. Killing and vandalizing all foreign things. Eventually, foreign troops were called to put down this Boxer rebellion. After the Boxer rebellion, John Hay again issued a series of open-door policies. These policies reflected American beliefs in the importance of exports, the right of America to intervene to keep foreign markets open, and the belief that America's survival depended on access to foreign markets. America as a world power. Two events signaled America's continued climb toward being the #1 world power. First, Roosevelt negotiated a settlement between Russia and Japan, who had been at war. His successful efforts in negotiating the Treaty of Portsmouth won Roosevelt the 1906 Nobel Peace Prize. And secondly, the construction of Panama Canal, of course. By the early 20th century, many Americans understood the advantages of a canal through Panama. It would greatly reduce travel times for commercial and military ships by providing a shortcut between the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. Building the canal. The French had already unsuccessfully attempted to build a canal through Panama. Yeah, and America first had to help Panama win their independence from Colombia, which it did, and then they moved to construction. And of course, construction of the canal stands as one of the greatest engineering feats of all time. Okay, yes, that was it guys for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button down below and make a subscribe. Alright, see you guys.